recording. Nothing I can do. See, it started recording automatically. I think this is the right one now. Okay, here. This is the right one. Because I'm letting people in now. The one, the old one, the first one you tried. Try it again. Yeah. All right, I'm getting off the phone. Bye. You know what? I think it was too soon for it to.
Okay.
Oh, Charlotte. She's a sweetheart.
I want to get you back on here.
Charlotte, Tom Adams, Jim.
Hello,
Hey, Jim.
Danny. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Danny.
Hey, Jim, no
Finally
matter
back.
what, Jim, no matter what, let's me and you keep coming back.
You got that right.
Me too, Jim. I'm coming. Me too.
Hey, I guess the rest of us are chopped liver.
No.
You know me.
I can't see everybody.
I'm begging my way in.
Hey, Danny.
Hey, Charlotte, honey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Where the hell's Shannon? Where the hell's Shannon?
On here and not everybody else.
Is my Julia in here? Is there a Julia?
God,
in
how do
here?
I just do me?
There's a Willie.
Danny, you're old enough to know how to do that.
I know.
Okay.
I got
We
it.
got it. We got it.
Set himself up with
All right,
that.
so show the board.
Got it on a private page. It's not like it's being broadcast.
But when they rewatch it, it's easier to watch a big picture of me than a bunch of little pictures.
And that's what I was having problems with last week, and that's why it froze up. I tried to mark just your picture.
Hi, Dorothy.
So what happened was, for some reason, I was on a different meeting because then nobody was getting in. But now it's okay. We can. You got the board. You can put it on me now.
Come on, get it.
All right, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Hi, guys in Cyberland there. Okay, so a little house cleaning again. People keep telling me that the meeting is really boring for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And there is no meeting the first 10 or 15 minutes when you're watching the recording. You're watching, we open up the Zoom room and it automatically starts recording. And the meetings, we open up at 6:30 and the meeting starts at 6:05. So you have 15 minutes that you can just skip through. But not tonight because for some reason we just got on now. So how about this? I'm going to go like this. That means start. I don't know what else to say. So technical difficulties. All right. So what a difference a week makes, huh, guys? For those of you that didn't make it here last week, did you get to watch the what you missed? Everybody keeping up with that? It's important to keep up. All right. Well, I'm glad you guys are all here. So let's kind of recap. We went over the doctor's opinion. What did we learn in the doctor's?
Willie, can you hear me?
Hey, you guys need to mute yourselves there. And if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself and jump in. All right. So what we learn from the doctor's opinion? Anybody got any questions on what we did last week? We kind of gave an example of what it means when the doctor's talking about to them they're only the alcoholic wife seems the only normal one. They're restless, irritable, discontent. Come on in, guys. We were just looking for you. We had technical difficulties again. No, we got it. All right, and then we did a test tube alcoholic, right? So anybody have any questions on what we went over last week with the doctor's opinion, last 2 weeks with the doctor's opinion? Or the week before when we talked about the stuff prior to going into the book? Any questions at all? Questions are good, guys. The more questions you got, the more you make me think of things and we can cover stuff. Nobody got a question? Got it all noted up. All right. Let's go over the Bill story. So before we start with Bill's story, what did the doctor focus on? The physical part of the disease. And he labeled it more, rather than an addiction, he called it more of an allergy, right? So, and before that, we talked about, we're going to have a twofold disease, right? Disease of mind, disease of body, right? So the mental part is like the obsession. Tells me it's okay, and those lies to me, makes me buy some silly lie that tells me to go ahead and take a drink. And then when I take a drink, then the physical part kicks in, where it ensures that I keep drinking, right? So my body has a abnormal reaction to the alcohol or the drug, coupled with an obsession of the mind. That's what makes it so different. That's what makes it kind of a hopeless condition. It's my head is trying to kill my body. My body's trying to kill myself. And come on in, guys. So alcoholism screws my body, and alcohol screws my body, and alcoholism screws my mind. Okay. Can't drink because of my body, can't stay sober because of my mind. Does all that make sense to you? Is anybody stuck on any of that they don't get that? It's kind of like, I'll give you a real silly analogy. Where's Mitch? I always pick on Mitch up here. Oh, he's hiding today, huh? So here, we'll use Scott today because he's sitting up here. So here's a real silly analogy of what we're really dealing with. Let's take a normal person that's not alcoholic, okay? And then we'll use Scott, who is alcoholic. And if it were possible, where we could remove Scott's from the neck up, his head, and take the normal person and remove that person from the neck up, his head, and switch them, and put the normal head on Scott's body and put Scott's head on the normal body. You with me so far? If it were possible to do that, what would happen? Well, I don't know. We'll see. See, the Scott's head on the normal body would tell the normal body, the normal person usually went to a party and maybe had a drink or two the entire time. But now that body has Scott's head on it, that body's in trouble, right? But Scott's head is going to tell him you got to keep doing it and keep going and keep going. And that normal head that's on Scott's body might think, what happened to me? Because he usually takes a drink or two during the part when he's at a party, and that's it. But that body's going to set off the allergy because already, see, so Scott's head is going to eventually destroy the normal body, and the normal body's head is screwed because of Scott's body. Does that make sense to you? So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a disease of mind and body, mental and physical. All right, let's go to Bill's story. So Bill's story is an example of the problem. It's for you to identify. And the first 4 pages of Bill's story is it's all about Bill, and he's got a lot of tendencies that most of us have, looking to succeed and do things and all that. But it's kind of normal stuff. So it's more about Bill than anything that we need to worry about. So we're going to pick up on page 5 in Bill's story. And the first paragraph on page 5. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day and often 3, got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s and I would pay my bills at bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin followed by a half dozen bottles of beer would be required if I would eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there was periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope. Now, none of us probably, but if you could pass this on to a normal person that you know and ask them to read that paragraph and then ask them, what do they think about this guy? It's all right. They would be appalled at what they just read. Right? I mean, he's waking early in the morning, shaking violently. He needs a tumbler full of gin and a half a dozen 6 bottles of beer just so he can eat breakfast. A normal person would read that and say, this man needs to be in the hospital. This man needs to be committed. There's something terribly wrong with him. But like Bill, we read this and go, eh. And Bill even takes it a step further. His next sentence, he says, nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. Now, a normal person reading this would actually absolutely 100% concede to the fact that he has lost control. He has no control at all anymore. If he's got to waken early in the morning, shaking violently, and has to have a tumbler full of gin and 6 bottles of beer just so he can eat breakfast. Nobody, no normal person would think that this guy has anything under control. But nevertheless, Bill says, I still thought I could control the situation. Okay. Then after that, what does he say? Gradually, things got worse. And the idea when you're studying this book, so last week, I think it was last week, we briefly talked about the reason they wrote the book was to raise the bottom. So, you know, you and I don't have to suffer the way they suffered, that we can be spared all of that horrific pain that these real bottom alcoholics went through, right? So even though that's why the purpose of the book, we have to try to, when we study the book, we have to try with each paragraph practically, when they're talking about something, how does this relate to my personal life? What, you know, so for me, for instance, I wouldn't wake up early in the morning shaking violently. I just would be up for 3 days or 4 days. And, you know, I wouldn't have to have a tumbler full of gin and 6 bottles of beer just to eat breakfast because I wouldn't eat breakfast. No, some more booze and drugs was my breakfast. So, you know, but that's how I relate my story to Bill's story. And throughout the book, as we study the book, you want to try to put your own personal experiences to what they're talking about in here. The closer you can come to you know, relaying your life to what they're doing here, the better you're going to be in recovery. As far as your personal recovery, that's going to help you more than anything. So Bill says all of this stuff, and nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. And then the next paragraph is gradually things got worse. Okay. And then he skipped down a little bit. He got a promising business opportunity, and he went on a bender. He says, I woke up, this had to be stopped. I saw that I could not so much as take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written a lot of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so this time I really mean it. Swear to God, this time I'm serious. Again, my own personal life, I could think of 100 times that I looked at myself in the mirror and say, "What's the matter with you, Danny? Why can't you stop this? You're weak. Something's the matter with you." And then I look at myself and I say, "I swear to God, I'm never going to do this again." And as soon as I got back up from crashing, I was doing it again. So, because people think, well, this guy wrote this in 1935 or 1930. I can't relate to this. If you can't relate to this, you're not in the right place. This guy's sharing his story, and his story is not going to be tailored for you. It's tailored for him. But tailor your story to what he's talking about. And you'll relate perfectly to what Bill's sharing. So what he's saying here is, he's counting on his willpower to beat this. He's going to get his will to attack this thing, right? Sick him, Will. This had to be stopped. And he says, I was through forever. And then what's the next paragraph say? Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. Again, me looking at myself in the mirror, swearing this was it. I was never going to do this again. And meaning it with every fiber of my being, meaning it. That's the thing I want you guys to think about a minute, is meaning it. Because I thought that I meant it. I really wanted it so bad that was good enough. And what I found out when I came into recovery, that's not good enough, wanting it so bad. We talked about that the first week here. Wanting to be sober is not, this program is not for those that want to be sober. It's not for those that need to be sober. It's only for those, it says in our book, that are willing to go to any lengths to get. That's what this program's for. If you're willing to go to any lengths, if you're willing to chase this, just like you chase the dope and the booze, or more so, then you got a chance. I don't remember anybody ever asking me if, you want to drink, Dana? Nah. I'm not, I'll pass. You want to go to a meeting? You want to go to an H&I meeting? You want to carry the message somewhere? You want to do it? I'll pass. That's not the same thing that we chase that out there, right? So shortly afterward, I came home drunk again. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone pushed a drink my way and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. Tell them I'm in a meeting. It's for me. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. What does that mean? He's calling on his willpower again, right? Come on, Will, let's get him this time. So on page 6, the first paragraph is great first step language. He says, the remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. Impending calamity is real. I found out what that was when I got here. You know what it was? It was impending calamity. Okay. Somebody unmuted himself to laugh. Okay. So now Bill's at a really, he's in a really great drunkard depressed mode, We drunks, we get in those modes. I can remember being in a in a local neighborhood bar and putting a quarter in the jukebox and playing the same song 100 times. It was a real sad, real song, whatever. But Bill's over here talking about, now he's thinking about really killing himself, right? He said, he said, the morning paper told me that the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market will recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. So again, it's that, remember the test tube that we made and we put all those things in it? By the way, I see a lot of people here that I haven't seen yet. It's hard to tell who's who with the mask on, but if this is your first week, and you really need to go online and watch the first 3 weeks, because you miss a week and you miss a lot of stuff. So that you won't know, you won't get the benefit of everybody else that's starting from the beginning. So there's a lot of good stuff in the first 3 weeks. It's on there. So what we're doing, we're recording the Zoom, and then by tomorrow it'll be up on Zoom. It'll be up on YouTube. And this is the address right here for YouTube. Danny Falcone 2021. Just go on there and they'll have each week, week 1, week 2, week 3. Well, not this week, though. I told you somebody kept saying that. All right. So Bill says that the mind and body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. So he's in a really depressing place. And at the bottom of this page, he says, a doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. So I know in AA we have a singleness of purpose. It's alcohol, but pertaining to alcoholism. But both Bill and Bob both drank and did some dope. Not that they did dope regularly, but Bill right here is talking about doing a sedative. So people feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking. I was 40 pounds underweight. And then the next paragraph, the bottom of the next paragraph, he says, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. So again, I tell you to make note every time they talk about mind and body, mental and physical.
Hey, Danny, what's the belladonna?
The belladonna treatment, I think, was they were doing work with water, putting you in water. And belladonna was a drug that they came up with that they thought, I don't know the medical term of what it was, some type of cocktail that they made. See, the first week that we were here, we talked about the problem was always that other people have labeled who we are and what's the matter with us and what we need to do. And it wasn't until Bill and Bob got together that alcoholics said, this is what the problem is, this is what the solution is, this is the program of action. And by the hundreds of thousands, people have recovered since then, by the millions. But so I believe it was some type of a cocktail along with a water therapy. They tried everything. And nothing worked really. So, some people, 1 out of 100 would maybe get sober, but it wasn't something that was worthwhile. All right, so we're on page 8. And the first paragraph, again, perfect first step words. No words could tell of the loneliness and despair I found in the bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. That's good first step stuff there. And then he got sober again for a little bit. And then in the middle of the next paragraph, he talks about how dark it is before the dawn. He said, I was soon to be catalyzed into what I like to call the 4th dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. So he talks about the 4th dimension a couple of times, and people always ask what that is. Is anybody concerned about what the 4th dimension is? There actually is no such thing as the 4th dimension. there's 3 dimensions of life, which we're going to go over later in this study. But there's 3 dimensions of life, but what Bill's talking about here, I know happiness, peace, and usefulness, and to the 10th degree, in a much more powerful way. So what he's saying is that all the dimensions of life were there for him, and so much more, and that's what he's calling the 4th dimension of existence. Okay, so now he's sitting in his kitchen and he's drinking, and the telephone rings, and it's his old friend Ebby, and he was sober. We're on page 9 now. And the rumor had it that he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. So let me give you just a little bit of history just to back up what Bill's saying here. So Ebby, that was Ebby Thatcher. He was up in, I'm not sure, I can't remember, New Hampshire or somewhere up there in that part of the country. And they were going to lock him up. And a couple of guys showed up. Roland was one of them. And I can't remember who the other guy was, but they showed up, and they were all pretty affluent people. So they knew the judge and everything. And they were members of the Oxford group. And so they went and talked to the judge, and the judge said, okay, I won't lock him up, but he's got to leave state. So he was like thrown out of the state. You take him out of here. Don't let him come back, and you can take him with you. And so that's what they did. And I don't know if they brought him from Vermont or something like that. But, and then he got sober in the Oxford group. And so now he's coming to see Bill. And that's where we're at in the book. But we're on the top of page 9. Bill says, rumor had it he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. I wondered how he had escaped. Of course, he would have dinner, and I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time we had chartered an airplane to complete a jag. His coming was an oasis in the dreary desert of fertility. The very thing, an oasis. Drinkers are like that. We like oasis. Why do you think, what's the importance that Bill's saying there? Again, trying to relate this to my own personal life, right? So here's his friend that he's known for years, and they've done things, and they had lots of partying together, and he's coming to see him, and he's sober, but Bill don't care. He's going to drink anyway, right? So here's the thing. Bill says, unmindful of his welfare, I thought only of recapturing the spirit of other days. You know why? Because right here, right now, sucks. I can't stand myself. I can't look in the mirror anymore. Future? Ain't no future. I can't see ahead, a day or two ahead. Things are so bleak and horrible for me. I can't even think about where I'm going to be next week. So the only thing that's going to bring me any comfort is once upon a time when I had fun doing this stuff. And I just look at my own life and think about that's where I was when I got here. And that's where Bill's at. And he's thinking about the other times because there's nothing to think about now. So he says the door opened and he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. It was inexplicably different. What had happened? I pushed a drink across the table. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wondered what had gotten into this fella. He wasn't himself. And Bill asked him, what's this all about? He looked straight at me, simply but smiling. He said, I've got religion. Now, the Oxford group was a religious movement, okay? But we're going to see something different from that in a couple of minutes here. So Bill says, I was a gust. So that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot. Now I suspect they're a little cracked about religion. And he says, but my gin's going to last longer than his preaching. He said, but he did no ranting. In a matter-of-fact way, he told me that 2 men appeared in court, persuading the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told of a simple religious idea and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked. He had come to pass his experience along to me if I cared to have it. I was shocked, but interested. Certainly, I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless.
Hey, Danny,
Yes,
are we allowed to interact a little bit?
yes.
Well, where he says he's hopeless there, back on page 8 where, it says no words can tell the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. Trembling, I stepped from my hospital a broken man. Up until that point, he thought he had a chance with alcohol, but after that, he was basically admitting to step one there, and then, when Ebby showed up, it seemed to me like he was more willing to, at some point, listen to him.
Yeah, he even admits he was. He's saying right here, I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. Yeah. So there's something, let's work off of that point. Let's go over to, and we'll backtrack, but let's go over to, find it here. Go to page 11. 1, 2, 3, the 4th paragraph down. So right before this, Ebby tells him that God did for him what he couldn't do for himself. And then the 4th paragraph said, Bill says, had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me at the minute. And that was none at all. Does everybody understand that paragraph? It's really an important paragraph. It's small, but it's important. Does everybody understand that?
No.
Okay. All right. So this is kind of well, Willie, where you were kind of alluding to. So here he is. He's sitting at the table with his friend that he's known for many years and got loaded with many, many times over the years. And Bill's looking at him, and his question is, had this power originated in him? Obviously had not. There had been no more power in him than there was in me at this moment, and that was none at all. So what he's saying is, let's say you and I, who wanted to, okay, what's your name?
Terry.
Terry? Sherry. So Sherry, let's say you and I been partying for years together. And now you're sober and I'm sitting there at the table with you. And you got this bright-eyed sobriety look about you. And I ask myself, is this power originated in her? I say, no, it obviously had not, because I know you was just as much of a drunk as I was. I know you were just as bad as me and worse. So then the question then in Bill's mind has to be this. If she got this power, where the hell did she get it? Or in Bill's case here, Ebby got this power. Where did he get it? How did he get it? And even more importantly, if he got it, can I get it? Yeah. Because he was no better off than me. And look at him now. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So that's an important paragraph. And I think that's what Willie was alluding to, where Bill's trying to make that transformation. I wouldn't miss much on page 10 anyway, so. And then it's right after that little paragraph on page 11, Bill says, that floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in the human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. We talked about that a week or two ago, right? That miracles happen all the time in Alcoholics Anonymous. This room is full of miracles. I don't know half of you. I know this room is full of miracles. He says, I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped the new soil. Now, even acknowledging all of that and acknowledging that that's great tidings that he's shouting, just the fact that he's bright-eyed and clear-headed. Even with all that, acknowledging all that, Bill still is screwing with himself. He says, despite the living example, my friend, there remain to me the vestiges of my old prejudice. What's prejudice? When we talk about prejudice in this sense, it's my old ideas. Yeah, it's all my old thinking. Okay. Which causes my prejudging. Now listen to this. This is important. Pay attention to this. It says, my friend suggested what then seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Now, don't yell out the answer if you know it, because it don't help nobody. There's two important things that statement says right there. What think it might be? What do you think it might be? Two important statements right there. Ebby says to him, why don't you choose your own conception of God?
Sometimes you have to give up what you thought.
Sometimes you got to give up what, okay.
My friend suggested that.
Huh? Huh? To choose? Well, we've been trying to choose for a long time. Somebody got their hand up back there? Huh? It's not about religion, no. That's an important thing. Why do you say it's not about religion? Yeah. Well, right. I'll get you in a minute. So the first important thing there is that he's no longer carrying a religious message. It's very important because you're absolutely right. There's no religion on earth that allows you to choose to define who and what God is. Every religion has a dogma. This is God, and this is how you get there. This is God, and this is how you get there. So if I say to you, choose your own conception of God, I can't be talking about a religion. I'm not pushing a religious message on you. The second important thing there is that I'm telling you to choose your own concept of God. If it's your concept, who are you going to argue with? Can't argue with me. It's not my concept. It's yours. And I don't know about you guys, but I never thought any of my concepts were bad. If I thought of it, I thought it was a great idea. Right? I never had a concept and thought, oh no, that sucks. Yeah, that's a good idea, man. And at the time, it seemed that way. Now, what were you gonna?
I was gonna say like just to think about your own way, your own ideas that can help you spiritually. Take your soul to help better yourself.
Yeah, but that's not in that message there. You can't mean all of that and just choosing your own concept. The message there is he wants Bill to be able to and what does Bill say right after when Abby says why don't you choose your own conception of God? That statement hit me hard, he said. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. So all of this is in italic and in squiggly writing, right? It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. Okay. He says, thus was I convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want him enough. At long last, I saw, I felt, I believed. Scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. All right, so on the next page, 13. Bill says, at the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of DTs. And now this next couple of paragraphs, Bill actually goes through the steps. In case you're interested. So there I humbly offered myself to God as I understood him to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without him I was lost. That's step 3. I ruthlessly faced my sins. Step 4, and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch. 6 and 7. I have not had a drink since. My schoolmate visited me and I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. Step 5. 8 and 9 is next. We made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. That's all 8 and 9. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Step 10. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. And that's also step 10. We'll learn more about that as we do those steps, but you'll see why that means that. Then at step 11, I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. Never was I to pray for myself, except as my request bore my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. All step 11. Then my friend promised when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. Step 12. All my problems.
Hey, Danny,
Yes.
were the steps wrote before he wrote this story?
That's a good question. I think they were.
Oh, wow.
I think they were. I'm not positive about that.
Kind of amazing to go back there in this story and read, you know.
Yeah.
That's his stuff.
I think they were.
The Oxford group had some steps, right?
Well, the Oxford group had 6 steps. They're not in my book. Because who's you got it there, Barry?
263.
Yeah, I don't have that in my book though. 263? 263 in the 4th edition. Turn to that, and you'll see the 6 steps of the Oxford group. So can you imagine? Bill goes off and comes up with the 12 steps and comes back to the group conscience. And now it's not 6 steps. Now he's got 12. Like if we had a group conscience, we're going to write our own steps and I come back with 24 of them tomorrow. You know? But somebody want to read them out real quick? Okay. So that was the program of action that they had. See, you remember when Bill met Bob was already a member of the Oxford group, but he couldn't stay sober. Bob knew what the solution was and had a program of action, but he couldn't stay sober because he wasn't armed with all 3 things necessary to recover. You remember that? We broke that down the first week. What is the problem? What is the solution? What is the program of action? So Bob had the solution down and the program of action, but he didn't know what the problem was. And until he met Bill, right? And Dr. Silkworth had shared with Bill what the problem was. And then when Ebby came and shared with Bill what the solution and the program of action was, Bill became the first man armed with all three things necessary to recover. What is the problem? What is the solution? What is the program of action? Then he passed that on to Dr. Bob. And then there were two people there. But you have to have all three things in order to really recover. You have to understand what the problem is, what the solution is, what the program of action is. And we saw where it says that in the book. We went over that. Okay, anybody got any questions? So Bill says, belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. Simple, but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light, who presides over us all. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. He fully accepted them. What did we talk about last week in the doctor's opinion, closing the doctor's opinion? Remember the word? There was a word that was in parentheses. Sold. Very good. It became sold. And that's what Bill's saying here, isn't it? And he became sold. There was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. Which is one of the reasons that we have the appendix in the book. Because most of us get it a little slower version. Some people do. I sponsored a guy that was a straight up drunk, but boom, got the God thing instantly. And he lasted about 12 years and then he got drunk again. Because he never did the work. All right. So then he went and saw the doctor, and the doctor told him something has happened to you, and I don't understand. But you'd better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. The good doctor now sees many men who have such experiences. He knows they are real. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been so freely given me. Perhaps I could help some of them. What an understatement that was, huh? Perhaps I could help some of them. Millions of people later, all these years later. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Faith without works was dead, he said, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice for others, he could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. So he says, if an alcoholic failed to perfect, it's an interesting word, perfect. You know what the definition of that word means? The definition is as good as it is possible to be. That's the definition of perfect. As good as it is possible to be. I always tell people, you know, you need a dictionary. Well, today you don't need a dictionary. But what do they call that thing? Wikipedia. Wikipedia. Is that a dictionary? Oh no.
Google.
Webster.
Webster. Thanks, Sharon. You're old school. That's what I use. All right. Okay. They said if he did not work, he would surely drink again, and if he drank, he would surely die. And faith would be dead. And it's also just like that. Somebody needs to mute themselves over there. Thank you. Sorry, honey, whoever you are.
Julie, you need to mute. Julia.
Okay. He says, my wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems.
Yeah, on your belly. You know you do. Tell
Sharon?
here.
Yeah, can you mute her?
Mute everybody.
Is that Sharon? Shannon?
No, it's not Shannon. The host there, they mute.
We don't know. Just mute everybody and let them unmute themselves. They need. Okay. All right. So we're on page 15. It says, we commence to make many fast friends and fellowship has grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part of. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. I've seen hundreds of families set their feet in a path that really goes somewhere. I've seen the most impossible domestic situations rightened, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I have seen men come out of a silence and resume a vital place in their lives, in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standings. There is scarcely any form of trouble or misery which has not been overcome among us. So what he's saying here, as he says many times throughout the book, is that these 12 steps work on every aspect of our life. In fact, the 12th step tells us that, right? Practice these principles in all our affairs. So whatever your problem is, there's people in here, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that if you've been sober a long time, you know, figure out what you're working the steps on. So is anybody stuck on that? Anybody stuck on that, or everybody's got something that they're working the steps on? No?
I'm sorry.
I've-
I'm a newcomer, sir.
well, you need to work the steps on alcohol.
I've been here for a long time. I never have it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got you. I need to.
Yeah, you absolutely need to work the steps on alcohol and drugs or whatever your thing is. But
First step, something else.
yes, yeah, we're gonna go over all that.
You understand?
We're gonna go over all that. We're gonna work the steps on whatever you're working the steps on as we go along. We're not there yet, but figure out what it is you're gonna work the steps on. Okay. So he says here, in one Western city, there are 1,000 of us in our families. We meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We're growing in numbers. An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. We talked about that in the doctor's opinion, right? What did it say? The supreme sacrifice. Remember that? Some people rather have to take the supreme sacrifice rather than do this stuff. Yeah. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it all. I suppose some would be shocked at our seeming worldliness and levity, but just underneath there's a deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us or we perish. Most of us feel we need look no further for utopia. We have found it right here and now. Each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. You know, Saturday, I just did a 90-minute workshop in Mumbai, India. Yeah. And actually, it went so good that I couldn't get it finished what we were doing. So I'm doing it again this Saturday. I'm going to finish it this Saturday. But I mean, and we were doing questions and answers, and I didn't understand the damn word they were saying. But I mean, just think about that, right? Mumbai, India. That's pretty far away. Oh. All right. So, you know, we talked about, Mitch, you just talked about how do we write the first step out? Well, you know, the thing is this here, right? We're going to go through an exercise. We're going to learn everything there is before we go through the exercise. But we're going to go through an exercise to take us to understand the first step so we can internalize it. But really, it's it's just about realizing at a gut level thing is that we've been practicing step one for 20, 30 years, some of us, on a regular basis. All we got to do is take a look at that now. Right? Every time I looked in the mirror and I swore I was never going to do it again and went back right out and did it again. What is that? That's perfect step one. That is powerless. Right? Powerless is when you look at yourself in the mirror and you swear to God, you're not going to do this again. And then you do it again. That's powerless. I mean, that's powerless. Unmanageability is a whole nother thing, but that's easy to look at. But so we're gonna what you've been practicing for all these years before you got here is step one. Over and over and over again. And now you're gonna come in here, you're gonna take a good hard look at that. And when you can internalize that, fully concede to your innermost self, as it says, when you can do that, then you've got the first step. Then you could go to the first of the 12 steps on page 59 and admit your powerlessness and understand what you're admitting. And because you got it, you own it. Okay. And so that takes some work, but we're going to go through these next couple of chapters and then we're going to do an exercise. And when the time we're done with step one, you will know the truth about yourself. And once you know the truth about yourself, I told you this and I promise you this. It's a promise. You can hold me to this promise. Once you know the truth about yourself, you can never, ever drink or use again on the truth. Impossible. The only way you could drink or use again after you understand the truth about yourself is to cut yourself off from the truth and buy some insane lie. It's not easy to do. It's not hard to do, Mitch, but it's not as easy as you think. It's easy for you to do all these years, but once you come in here and do a proper step one and really understand the truth about yourself, it's not as easy to block yourself off from the truth anymore, because what you're doing is you're continuing on. So just understanding, just fully conceding to your innermost self in and by itself is not enough. Now you have to get in touch with a higher power, and now you got to start removing the things that block you from God. And when you're doing all those things, it's not so easy to block yourself off from the truth. Unless you have some type of reservation, and we're good at that. But what is a reservation? You make a reservation, that means you're going somewhere. So what we learn to do is look at all that and get rid of all that bullshit. And you get rid of all that, you can't. Here's what my promise is this. If you thoroughly do this step, you'll understand the truth about yourself, and from that you'll never be able to drink and use again. Understanding the truth about yourself. So once you do that, you can't drink and use on the truth. You just can't do it. Let me just give you just a tip of the iceberg of what I'm talking about. I spent a lot of years in prison. And I can tell you today, I don't ever want to be a prisoner again. That's not what I want. So in order for me, because in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a great opportunity. We get to become whoever we'd like to become. But in order to become who we'd like to become, we first have to understand who we don't want to be. And when you learn who you don't want to be, now you have a chance to become something different. And I can stand here and look at you and tell you, I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. So I can't do the things I used to do because that will wind me up in prison. And I don't want to be so lost and desperate and from alcohol and drugs anymore. So I don't do alcohol and drugs anymore. And I've replaced all of that stuff with things that bring me joy and happiness. And that's what we do here. And when you do that and you stay on the beam, Shit, I've been sober a long time. I still got people from my old neighborhood call me up. Hey, come to New York. We got something going on. No thanks. No thanks. Didn't I just read they gave your father life in prison last week? Yeah. I think I'll stay here. No.
Probably real.
That is the truth. That's exact truth. I mean, that shit happens all the time. Oh. All right. So we only got a couple minutes, so we won't go on to the next chapter. Anybody got any questions? Questions are good. Questions? We got to pass the basket. Just to pay for the space that we use, so. Anybody got any questions while I'm passing the basket around? Don't be shy. We need your help putting the tables back and setting the chairs back up to where they were. If that's it, then thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Danny.
guys. There, see you.
Appreciate it, Danny. Good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Guys.
Bye, guys.
See you,
Thank you
Danny.
very much, Danny. Catch you next week.
Bye, Greg's crew over there.
Love you.
Kathy, Shannon, Willie.
Hey, Danny,
Jim, real
put
good
the,
seeing you, Jim.
See you, Danny.
All right, guys.
hey,
Take
Danny,
care.
put the hot spot in our spot.
You got it.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.